Okay, this is the document, the start of the Project Alpha Module 1 project. It's now Monday and it's due on Friday, so I have 5 days to complete this, and I'm just going to run up real quickly what it entails, but I'll do a step-by-step of every feature that I add. So this project will have me needing to build out project modules, register project in the admin, project list views, default path redirects, URLs, login page. You require a login for project list views. You're going to have a sign up, you're going to have a login, you're going to have log out pages. There's going to be a task model, and I'm going to need to register those tasks in the admin themselves, the project detail view, a create view, and last, I will need to have a navigation and also the ability to show my tasks in a list view function. So without further ado, let's go into it and just record each feature of the way. I believe it's going to be in 17 steps. That means it's going to be 17 segments to this videos with different attire change throughout, because I'm not going to complete it all in one day. It's probably done over 3, 4, 5 day max time frame. So let's get to it. Okay, there you have it. So this is just to show documentation in my terminal of getting everything set up for a project, and then just a repository I forked, and then I cloned it into my terminal to then about to open into my VS Code. So all this essentially was just creating and adding the proper fundamentals to get my Django web framework up to date, and that's my feature 1. There's even built-in tests for every single feature or step along the way that I have to implement to make sure I'm just going about it the right way and everything is lined up. And if I go to my repository called Project Alpha, I even added a wolf here. You can now see I have my first commit committed. Feature 1 complete. So moving on to step or feature 2. Okay, you probably don't want to see the screen of me. Let's go to the bigger screen. All right, so just finished step 2, which was creating. Boy, it's going to be hard to scan through all this, so we're just going to talk about it rather than really show it or really focus it. Maybe I'll have it right here. Oh, here we go. Nope, JK. Oh, here we go. So this is where I started my Django app called Tracker, and I have then created 3 apps inside it called the projects, accounts, and tasks. From there, I then had to just make sure I added it to my settings.py in my Tracker project folder, the 3 apps that I created, the installed apps, tasks, accounts, and projects. On to step 3. This is now the first model that I have created thus far called project that has 3 attributes: the name, a description, and the owner. I want to make a note that I place this in my projects app folder, and I learned 2 new things this time around. I'm familiar with both of them. I just didn't really look into the details to familiarize myself up until this point. But for example, the directions I were given for the attribute description is the string can have an unlimited amount of text. So in this case, if you do character field actually has a maximum, I believe, of 250 some characters roughly, or text, whereas text field's unlimited. So that's why I don't have to enter anything in there. In this case, from knowing my attribute is unlimited. And the last thing I want to state, that this function, the string self function that returns self.name, the name of the project models. The reason you want to include this in this case for the first module or model project, or my model project, is when I go into the database into Python that comes with the Django project. This really helps with the organization and actually seeing the name of my class rather than just numbers, attached to an object. So it just really helps it define and make it more presentable in the labeling of items. Sorry, I just realized I'm looking at the wrong screen as I'm talking, so I'm moving on. Okay, so for this step, probably help if I get the right code up. For this step, I took the model project that I just created and I registered it in my admin folder in my projects app by making sure I'm importing that model, and then registering it with the syntax of admin.site.register and the name, project. Bueno, finally we're going. There we go. It's been a little while since I last updated. This is step number 5 and where I am currently at. So for this, let me just take a zoomed out view here. What did I do? That's a good question. What did I do? So I created a views function. It seems like an hour or two ago I did this. Ran into a little hiccup. That's all good. So I created a views function to list projects that are coming from my models. Okay. So upon creating this create view list function, or it's not it's a function. My context name is projects. I then had to make sure I add it to my URL patterns in my app folder, and then I just also had to go back to my URLs in my projects folder and be sure to include the overall projects app URL pathway. So every time I add more pathways, that's already taken care of. So after I did those, I also incorporated the template that I'll be using, which is a list.html projects. And I already went ahead and created a base HTML right here that I'll be using throughout the rest of the projects. And then I created a projects list HTML seen here. And by far, this for some reason like took the longest amount of time, and it's still not right. So what I did is I ended up using a for loop and referencing the Django documentation for utilizing the empty tag, because this step is asking for, if there's no data in the field, then to return a message, in this case just you are not assigned to any projects. There's no data in the field. And when there is data, this is what I'm getting right now, which is almost correct, but I shouldn't have these duplications of name and number of tasks. It should just be one column header, the name and the number of tasks, and then the projects themselves. So I'm still figuring that out. I've been tinkering with that for like the past hour and a half. Surprisingly, it's funny. Sometimes like I feel like it's a really simple thing, but for whatever reason, I just haven't found out the answer yet. But I will over the next length of this project. I know for a fact, absolutely. So this is directly from the Django documentation website. The for and empty, I did try this earlier, but this is actually a little bit longer to include an if and a for. Rather, you can just do a for with an empty. Moving on. Okay, so for this step, real easy. What we're doing is redirecting my the localhost 8000 page to this list.html template that I built out. So in order to do that, we just have to go into the projects folder, being the trackers, again, the name of the project. URL, we're going to first import a shortcode of redirect, create a function, redirect to home, and then include the name home of the URL pattern that we're going to create. Well, I already created, which you will find where it is here in my apps folder projects. I changed the list projects to now it has the name of home, because I want this to be listed when we go to this address right here. So when we do go to this address, this is what we first get as a screen saying reverse for home is not found. But upon updating it and open it up again, this is what we're left with. So redirect has worked successfully. All right, we're on step number 7 for this. I finally did some coding in my accounts app folder. Started off first by creating a form for a user to log in. So the name of the class is a login form. And in this case, since it's a login form, basic login form, we're just focusing on 2 fields or 2 attributes, username, password. So once I created that, I then take login form and I'm going to import it into my views folder right here. And in addition, I need to create a function that can handle a get and a post method. And then once the username matches with the username, password matches with the password, it's then going to redirect to my home page that I set up in the previous part of the video. And then also then redirect to my login.html page, which is the login page itself. So that was created here. I have additional folder set, but it's created here in my login.html. This is where I kind of have like the security token to make sure the password and the username are matching up correctly. And when everything is running accordingly, so we'll go to this local host, and when everything is running accordingly, I will be able to, or now you're able to see this page, account login, probably because I have too much there. There we go. Account. Okay, there we go. URL was wrong, but now I have a username and the password, and I should be able to actually log in now with my created super user account, Xander. And there we go. Worked out. Look at that. Change password. It's a bad password. Apparently my name is a bad password. All right, moving on. Okay. Step number 8. In my views.py, I was requested to make sure that when the lists of the projects are being displayed, the user has to be logged in already. So upon the best way to do that is you're going to have to import from the Django contrib auth decorators, because when you do the @ sign, that's a decorator right there. So I imported login required and I added the decorator login required, so that when a user is logged in, I also made the owner, or in this case, the owner, or the owner, equal to the user. So instead of previously, this was projects.objects.all. So in filtering this, I made sure that the owner equals the user who is requesting this function to be displayed. Okay, moving on. Okay, for this step, I created a user logout function after on my accounts app page in the views folder, user logout, and it redirects back to the login page. And I just, on doing that, I had to make sure I registered on my urls.py folder on the accounts app right there. Nice and short. All right, we are back at it. So for this feature, I have first created a new form called sign up form, where the field or the attributes are going to be username, password, and a password confirmation. Then after I created the sign up form, I'm then importing it into my views shown here, and then creating a user sign up function where once the form is only valid, once the username, the password, and the password confirmation have been entered, and the password is equal to the confirmation variable, then the user will be created, saving the username and password equals password, and then redirecting to my homepage. And if that is not true, then there will be returned a message to the individual that the password does not match. And from there, the user will then be taken to the signup.html, which I created a new directory in my templates directory in my accounts app called registration and the signup.html. Upon that, once you're able to see that, that'll be displayed right here. I'm totally just forgetting the URL. So this is what it will look like shown here. Okay, moving on. Okay, this is the first time I'm now accessing my tasks app. And for this, I was tasked with creating a new model for tasks, and the attributes for this were name, start date, due date, is completed, project, and assignee. Now this was all pretty much familiar for me, except for the project. I had to reference for my foreign model my model that was in my projects app, and this took maybe like 20 or 30 minutes of my time to figure out actually how do you reference that without getting these errors that would keep getting popped up right here. The field defines a relation with model project.project, which is where it's located in my projects folder, which is neither installed or is abstract. And essentially what that means is I just didn't define it correctly, and that meant that I had to properly import it with the from projects.modules, projects.modules, import the project, and that's the name of the class, or in this case, the model that I created. And now it allows me to use project, because before I would use like single exclamation marks or double exclamation marks. I would say project, or I'd go project.project, and this is the correct way to do it. Moving on. Okay, so for this, I have to now take the model that I just created, the task, and I have to be sure that I can register it in my admin in my task folder. So what I first have to do in order to do this is I'm going to have to import it into this folder. And by the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to do from tasks dot models. Okay, and I'm going to import the name of that model, and that was, my goodness, what was the name of that? Task. Okay, so that's actually going to be task, not tasks, task. Okay, and then from here, we're going to model it after what I wrote here. So it's going to be admin.site.register. That's what we're doing. We're registering this in the admin so that it'll pop up in the admin when I access it on the back end. And we just have to change project to task because that's the name of the model we're importing. And that should be good to go. And what I can actually do now is I can run a test, because this is step 12, and we can see how it comes out, and all good to go. So that was number 12. We're moving on to number lucky 13. Okay, we're back at it after what, like a 15, more than that, like a 24-hour hiatus. I finally figured it all out, starting after step 12. So I'm on step 13, and took a while, but I got it all figured out. So for step 13, I had to introduce and create a function that would show this specific project and later on the details or the tasks that are tied to that project itself. So for starters, start with a list view, an ID equals ID, my context project, and making sure it is being rendered to my projects /detail.html in my projects folder. So after I did this function, I created this function, I then put it into my urls.py folder in the projects app, shown right here, show project. And again, there's an integer .id. We then take that and created my detail.html. And this is probably what took the longest, is figuring out how to properly get my if statement, and then making sure my for loop for the Django template is correct, so that it actually shows this data. So for over 20 hours, I struggled to figure out how to display this data properly, but I have now finally figured it out. And yeah, so with that said, this is what the final part looks like for what I was asked to do for this step. Let me go ahead and just run the server so you can see. All right, so upon going back to my web page, you'll have this. So adding the description, this is just jargon or nonsense, but again, the project title, description from my models page, the name of the tasks, or just the tasks themselves, the ability to create a new task, the names of the tasks, and then this is all of the information pulled from my data in the task model. All right, on to number 14. Okay, on to step 14 for this. Created a function called create project, but actually before I created the function itself, I had to start by outlining and creating a class model called project, and give it the attributes name, description, and owner. And you can see with the owner, it has a foreign key attached to the user model that's built into Django, and setting null equals true. Yes, just making sure this is the right one. Okay, after creating this model project, I am then importing it right here into my views.py in the projects.app, or the project app. And this is my function that I came with up here. And I would like to point out that I added the .owner equals request.user, and then I'm setting the form, the project equals form.save to false, and redirecting it to show the list of projects in my HTML. And registering it in my URL path. So showing listing projects, list projects, and creating the HTML template for that, which is projects create.html, shown here. And just for reminders, the CSRF underscore token is like the built-in security feature that comes with the Django web framework. And the final part of this that you're left with when you're at the main project section is now you have the ability to create a new project. So you can see here, let's do testing feature, so step 14. Description, testing feature, and then the owner is Xander, and now it's going to pop up right there, testing feature 14. And I forgot to mention in my step 13, I also gave the ability now to hyperlink or click on any of your projects and automatically be sent to the task, display tasks. And in this case, when there's no data, it'll automatically populate with a message saying this project has no tasks. On to step 15. Okay, we are back at it. Step number 15 consisted of having to create a create task function, but in order to do that, I had to first go and create a models form because everything is being done in my task app. So I did first create a models form and create a task form, and I was given detailed instructions to include all of the fields or the attributes from my models except the, was it the project one? I think it was the project one. Yeah, the project one. So that's, but you don't, that's not true. You see project right there. The signee, except the is completed, that's what it was. So I'm negating or not including the is completed. And I have made errors on several occasions of not use the open bracket, but rather the parentheses. So be sure whenever you're doing the fields in your form.py to always use bracket notation. And from there, take the task form and import it into my views.py, shown right here. And then creating a create view called create task, and being sure, based on the directions, that I'm not supposed to assign the owner of the task, and this means that I am using form.save right there, redirecting the user to the list underscore projects URL, and also creating a HTML template called create.html, so that I'm registering the URL shown right here, create task. And this is my create.html template, and let's see and have a look what it looks like. So in order to access it from my projects page, I have to first go to a project, in this case testing feature 14, and now you can see there's a link called create new task. You can click it and you're brought here. So again, we'll say testing for 15 this time. We'll do pre-generated dates. And this is for testing feature 14, and this is for Xander. Go ahead and create, and now you see the number of tasks has been updated from 0 to 1, and it is right there. Good to go. On to number 16. Okay, so for this step, I am creating a views function that is going to display and show the tasks all assigned to one person when they're logged in. So for starters, just like the previous functions, I have to make sure I use my decorator login required importation before the function, so that way it ensures that the user that's logged in is the only way they can see this information. And then when I'm just using my list view, I'm making sure that my variable tasks is set to filter and display the assignee attached to the user. In this case, the context that I'm naming is tasks, key, and the value is tasks, and it is going to render the tasks app in the mine.html, but I'm first going to register it, shown right here, my tasks, and then displaying it by implementing a if statement. So if there's no tasks in the model or in the database, there's going to be a message saying you have no tasks assigned to that user. And if they do have tasks, it's then going to, or I then created a for loop for task in task name that goes back to my context name, displaying the name, the start date, the due date, and if the task has been completed or not. So without further ado, let's show you what that looks like. So this is in my super user account, Xander, and if we click on my tasks, you can see there's been lots of activity of trial and error done here, but this is what it's supposed to look like. These are all the tasks assigned to Xander. Now let's log out and let's go into another account that I just made called Salsa. Okay, we're in Salsa. There's been no projects created whatsoever, and if we go to my tasks, we should see that there's no tasks assigned to this user. And there you have it. You have no tasks. On to the last step. So sweet to say. Okay, last step, and for this last step had to do with the back end of the navigation feature, and that'll be done in my base.html folder that has been extended to all my other HTML folders in my entire project in the 3 apps that I have in my project. So what I included here was first an if statement to make sure that only when the user is logged in, authenticated, they're going to see the URL links for their tasks, their projects, and the logout feature. If they're not logged in, they're only going to see login and sign up, and that's the end if. It's with an else. So what does that look like? That looks just like this. So no one's logged in right now, and they're seeing login, sign up. We're going to go ahead and log in to show you then what the user would see when they're logged in, and they're going to see this. My tasks, my projects, and logout, which are all displayed right here. And let's just go ahead and click on each one to make sure they take us to the correct destination. My tasks. Those are my tasks. My projects, those are my projects, and logging out. We can do this too. My projects, and that's my projects, and logging out. And there you have it. 17 steps of backend fun using Django.